All right. I thought I quickly talk to you about this year's conference, which will be in the beginning of November in Berlin and online. Okay. And the main topic of today is again the voting session. But let's start with the latest conference news. Anthony Williams will be our third keynote speaker, and that is really great news. So this is basically the C++ news of the week for Meeting in C++ for the conference, that Anthony Williams joins us. And with that, next week when the voting ends, the full program of Meeting C++ 2025 will be online by next week. And the voting basically is now the counterpart to, I've asked recently the community what C++ topics they are right now thinking and caring about. And I've later also, like when I posted this on Reddit, we had the discussion on Reddit, and that brought also some interesting points up. And when I go on the main website, there is the news on the voting. So let's see what people actually care about. And so the voting on the talks has begun in 9th June, and it will end on June 22nd, which is a Sunday. And then, which means next Monday, I'll be able to import the voting result and then choose the program. There will be some more news on the program later I can hint at, but I cannot yet tell you that. I've recently also, last week with sponsors. Sponsors have a bit more an influence this year, but we yet have to announce some of those sponsors. But we started working with sponsors now, and that is coming during summer and later. But for now, let's go to the voting. This is the good and old voting tool which we ever had and which we'll probably ever have. This is a process that has now been almost unchanged for 10 years or more, and it has always served the conference very well. And so right now, you can create your own voting session. If you already have a ticket or have otherwise spoken in past editions of Mini C++, you have a first email which has a special voting link, which gives you a bit more of a voting weight, which is important in the voting itself if you want to care about this, especially like if you have bought a ticket and you're an attendee, you should use that link and vote with that link. For normal folks, you need to link to create an account and to log in is unfortunately necessary. For those special links, that login is not needed. But let's look at the talks. We have 107 submissions, and let me show you the voting hints here. So as said, the voting will close on June 22nd. And we are viewing the first talk of 107 talks totally submitted. And so again, we have more than 100 submissions, and let's have a look at some of them. I cannot go through all of them. That would be, if we spent like a minute on every submission, then we are here for quite some time. So we have this submission about reinterpreted cars, demystified, are you using it safely or not? That is probably an interesting topic. You have the talk description and you have the outline. The outline here is quite elaborate. And it's always a bit different what speakers provide as an outline. The talk description is okay. And well, is that, how do you want to vote this talk, or how do you see this talk? 0 is the worst, like, as I say, 5 is best, 0 is worst. So you have to think about which strategy you want to choose and how you want to vote. I think 5 is always for talks you find special and you actually really want to see happen. You would say that maybe I go to a different talk, but I definitely want to have the recording of that talk. Give it a 5. A talk you would like to see is like a 4, but if you really want to see it, give it a 5. And then we have the whole system going down, counting down to 0. And in practice, the voting then will turn this into a shifted index where we go from -3, -2, and -1 to +1, +2, and +3. And that way the votes cancel each other out a little bit. And that is a means to not have like the most popular talk gathered too much on popularity on points then, and that way we have a voting field which has a smaller spread and it just looks better in graphs, and it does not make a difference in the result of the graph. And this is a navigation here, as you see. The next talk is about reusable code and reusable data structures. Data structures are always an interesting topic. They've chosen to speak on dry. It's one paragraph, not a second paragraph. Sometimes people hide things in the outline, and maybe that is something when we see how much in the outline is. There could have been a second paragraph, maybe. And basically, when you look through those talks, and yes, I can see the speaker. Most people cannot. You also can enter a comment, but I will not click on the speaker. I think this is actually, so this is a talk which has not been, so this might be, might be already on the internet. Let's look if we go forward. So compile once, run everywhere. Also a talk which could be interesting. And seems this talk has been at least linked to the Qt Contributors Summit. And I think this is a classic example where the talk description is just too short. I think there's like 2 talks which have a 1-sentence or 2-sentence paragraph, which are really short. And that is, for me, very, very much a counterexample. It's pure coincidence that this shows up. There's 107 talks, and those talks are all randomly ordered, right? So there's an array where every talk is in the same order always, and then I have an array which is an array with the indexes, and this is always randomized. And I think this is just, the link could have been in the talk description. And I think, as I say, for meeting C++, I would do some research, etc. So maybe on the second paragraph thing would have been helping you here. That being said, that I'm not sure if this is like, a topic which the title is does that jam with the community. And when I said like what topics are interesting to you, that's why I asked, and I think I will continue to bring this up when we have the call for talks, and to get a feeling what the community wants to see. That was a really good idea this year. Let's go to the next talk. Now we get a talk with a bit more description. embedded friendly C++ features that make a difference. And now we get a really short outline and have a really detailed, or maybe not a detailed description, but definitely we have a few sentences here. And I do want to say that meeting embedded is not a thing anymore so much. So I do think that having an embedded talk at meeting C++ has value, maybe even several, if we have space for them. And with the 107 submissions we have this year, there's more space for embedded talks than we had last year. Last year, we had the committee coming, and with the committee meeting afterwards in Poland last year, it just was not a thing that we could accommodate the embedded topic that much. So this year is a bit better. Also, we have more submissions on this this year. And so on. There's now a lot of things. Now you can supercharge your C++ development in Visual Studio. And I'm not sure if we see it the first time, but yeah, there's like speakers can indicate if this talk has been presented somewhere else. And seems they want to prepare this. I do want to say that historically talks on Visual Studio are way underrepresented at Meeting C++, because that is just something which usually Microsoft contributes, and Microsoft has not contributed a lot of talks to Meeting C++. They never sponsored the conference, etc. So this would be nice to have as part of the program, maybe. But also I have to say that not everyone uses Visual Studio, and how relevant, for example, like is this talk for everyone else. And that's why I'm happy to have the voting to give me guidance on what people want to see. And then I still can, after that, make some choices and say, maybe we want to have a talk about Visual Studio, if we can have one. And here's a talk about somebody's experience in the upcoming meeting in Sofia, which is currently ongoing. Also something nice, but it's also a relatively short talk description. The outline is a bit more detailed, maybe. Could also be another case where if the talk is accepted, I ask the speaker to update the talk description. That's a thing. We do not freeze those all the time. They are technically frozen, I should say that. But here is a talk about build systems, I think, CMake. Short outline, that's fine. 2 paragraphs. And I think like we should have some talks about, of course, building C++, CMake, etc. And the voting result in the end will help me to choose which speakers will give those talks. That said, from the overall submissions this year, I don't see so much that we have like one big topic. I like that we have a lot of talks on CMake and package managers, etc. So there's some variety in that, but it's not like the hot topic of the year. And we used to have a lot of talks on coroutines. I think we have like a few on that too this year. It's still like a popular topic, or some speakers have specialized in it. And this is quite a unique talk here. We have a submission on an entity component system, and I think these are often known from game devs. And I would think that might be interesting to see if the audience that takes part in the voting likes this. And that's the voting part. This is the next talk, a moving talk without tears. Move semantics, always interesting. Back to the basic namespaces. Can you give a 1 hour talk on namespaces? I'm not sure. Contracts. I think we will see more talks on contracts in the future, but right now contracts is still like, something which is in 26. And I'm excited to see first talks about it. Using types to save your code's future. Nice title. And so on, right? There is some speakers have chosen very long titles, like The Missing Step, making data-oriented design 1 million times faster. That is a bold claim. But would be really interesting to see a talk about just basically data-oriented design. As I guess the keynote from Mike Acton on this. I've seen it back then live. It was amazing. And I think this is a topic which definitely in performance and generally performance topics are important to the community. That also showed the survey I did, hacking and securing C++. So yes, securing and security and safety in C++. It's not a lot of talks, but we do have some talks, and that is very interesting to see. And also those talks are mostly from folks where I would say they are able to give them. And we have to see how much the voting result will look into this. One thing you cannot see here is if the talk is online only. I have, I think, 10 submissions this year which are online only, which may or may not also mean that I'm not directly accepting all the talks which are online only. But then also the talks which are not accepted, those speakers sometimes become online speakers. So, and I'm not sure if I talked about the audience level. The audience level basically is just some way the speaker interprets their talk and what audience they want to target. But advanced people will still go to this talk if they want to, right? It's just that beginners and intermediate folks are also welcome. So I've seen people like spend too much time on this in the review. Don't put too much into this. While it's visible in the talk description at the conference, people will often ignore this. So some people, of course, will take this as a hint if it's for them or not, or maybe choose to go to a different talk because of it. And there's a reason these exist, and that's a good and nice thing to have. But in the end, also the audience of Meeting C++ is all kinds of folks and very diverse. And with that comes that, advanced people go to talks which are only for beginners because they want to learn something or they're interested in that topic and then maybe contribute. So to lie and hopefully to lie usefully, I know that this talk is for the online track. So this is a talk which you will be already able to see in October when we do the pre-recordings. I also know the speaker, and I just gonna say I've had an interview with that speaker recently this year. This is one of the packed authors which wrote a book, and so very nice that he submitted, and I'm still keen to look at the results of the voting to see where this went and how what the community thinks about it. And the title is, of course, a bit funny, but nice. Yeah, and that is basically what we have currently in the conference. I do want to say that, yes, the voting, once again, is not linked on the website of the conference, but it's actually in the talk description, or in the video description of here. I, of course, will put it. And also you'll find it directly on the website and on social media. And that's basically it. And I probably, will update the website from the conference to point to the voting for the last days. And right now, I have a page with statistics for the current voting, but I cannot show you that in the live stream, but I can read it to you. Just some current statistics, and just, let me update that. Currently, we have 94 voting sessions live, which includes the one voting sessions I showed you, which maybe then that makes it 93, right? So the vote distribution of like between 0 and 5 is, I think, not that interesting, but right now we have 4,480 votes which have been casted, and 5,578 votes have not been casted. And then there's 2 talks which only have 36 votes, and the spread goes from the min vote count from 36 up to 48, which is 1 talk. And as more people will contribute to the voting sessions, that should close out and close in again. But this, at the end, we will probably have like 40 to 50 votes on every talk. I do also have like a live view on the voting results here. So let's just say that is a very interesting result currently, but the website cannot do the weighting of the talks, of the votes, and so I don't want to show that to you anyways, right? So it's very interesting, and a lot of new speakers and a lot of well-known speakers which have submitted, of course, seem to be in the top right now, but that also can change a lot by experience from the last years. In the end, we will have more than 100 voting sessions, and that is still very much in the flux. And then again, when the weights are actually also in the system, which they're not on the website, then that has a huge impact. And last but not least, let me go back to the voting. This tool is built to be slow. It's not fast. And I don't want people to just click down and click through. And so voting takes a bit of time. If you start your voting session and you've done 10 talks, that's fine. And if you want to contribute more, that's fine. You can, do every evening 10, 20. You do not have to finish it, all right? It's automatically in the database, and every vote counts and helps those talks you've seen. Also, it's just an option for you just to look through all the talks and only vote for those which you really like. There is no wrong or right in the voting, in my opinion. And then, of course, there's a link which gives you the experience to be at the same talk every time. But if you share that link with someone else, that link will lead to a different talk as they're randomized. So this is the current ongoing voting, and that way we will know what topics are actually have been interesting from the selection bias of the submissions. Again, this year we didn't have a lot of submissions on game dev, and I'm not even sure if we have one. Like, there's not like one C++ in game dev submission or something, which I could definitely say is about game dev. I would like to see those, and also like talks on Qt are kind of missing. Seen a talk on Qt, a comment on Qt 5. So one of the talks seems to mention Qt 5, which is a bit outdated, according to that comment. But yeah, so generally, I think that I need to do a post on what C++ topics are interesting to you and your team right now every year when we start the call for talks. Have those discussions first on LinkedIn, on Reddit, on other pages, and then post, an excerpt or an overview on that on the website. That gives me a good feeling what people care about, what people want to see. It inspires maybe some people to submit their talks. It might also give them ideas about what they want to talk about. And I think that is an important thing which we as a community need to see, that like the talks which are great often are the outliers, the talks which are getting rarely submitted. And just giving people a feeling what people are interested in might push a few people to say, I wasn't sure about this idea. Should I give a talk on that? But now where I see that people are talking about it, I take a shot on it. Or even like now where I know that nobody has talked about it, I will, still want to see how the interest is. And that is, I think, another strength of the voting, to show how the community thinks about certain topics. Like, we have some talks on AI. And yes, we also have some submissions which obviously have been edited in AI. A few speakers do this to improve their English, and I think that's fine. And yes, also we have some people commenting on the English of some speakers that their submissions, have like not have been checked by Grammarly or something. Okay. And on the other hand, some speakers seem to just use this as some tool which is just part of their life now. But I do want to. I have been looking at it, and it's only a few speakers, and it's not only new speakers, it's some experienced speakers. And so I think that from my own point of view, I'm kind of neutral on this, and there's not really a bad example this year. Last year we had a talk which quoted the title of the talk in the first sentence, and that was a different title than the title that was submitted, which was kind of odd. And I am not sure if that was AI generated, but it had the feel. And with that, I think we're going to close the session. Thank you. But as I was live on LinkedIn, let me see if I can get into the live stream somehow. But I should be, yeah, there seem not to be any comments. All right, so let me close this, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.